Hello, everybody. It's Sunday. It's Q&A time. And this is kind of a very startling series of questions. I'll warn you in advance, but I don't make up the questions. They come from Patreon. This one's called Bitcoin and AI. We'll be talking about ASI, the future, the next 8 years, a little bit about options and cash and what you do when you reach your retirement bag and so forth. But there's a lot to cover here. Big thank you to the mods in the chat. Jordi, K8, T&D, and the whole gang. Thank you all for coming. And of course, just a guy on the internet and never financial advice. Let's get into it. All the questions come from Patreon, so do not shoot the messenger here. All I do is answer the questions. I want that to be perfectly clear. First one is from Peaceful Warrior. Hey, James, Jordi, Visser, and Dan Tapiero have both said Bitcoin is an AI play. Can you explain their thinking like I am 5, please? Thanks for everything. I think there's a couple of ways to dice this up. I do believe everything is moving to the blockchain, but the question is which one? And there's a couple of things that would make me hesitant about calling it a pure AI play. But let's go to, and much respect to, of course, Dan and Jordi, but let's go to where we are with Bitcoin. First of all, there is a massive bottleneck. The 7 TPS is not going to cut it for AI. No chance in hell. You need something like Solana or Visa even to get close to what's required. And this is very important because if there's multiple ways to interpret this, and I'll cover all three. But if it was to be used to power AI, it's simply not fast enough. Think of it like a store of value, not a processing system. Next, let's look at speed numbers. So if you look at the number of tokens, tokens are the currency by which you get charged or pay for AI processing. You have Grok, which is the number one AI. It's doing trillions and trillions of tokens, trillions in very short windows of time. There's no way, there's no way Bitcoin could even get close to what's required. This is called speed of light for, to support things like micro interactions and people requesting knowledge from AI and paying for tokens. It's simply never going to work. However, there is an angle that does make it possible. And that's what I call the wealth tangent. So Bitcoin as a value layer, there will be a huge amount of wealth made from AI. There already is. I think half of all employees at NVIDIA are worth millions. I think some of them, even a big chunk of them, are worth more than 25 million a pop, which is basically ultra high net worth. But all of this value needs to go somewhere. Some people sometimes need to take some off the table. Just like I envision, there are people that are taking profits in Bitcoin and they're moving it to AI. There'll be people who'll be taking profits in AI and moving it to Bitcoin. It cuts both ways. And this is where I do believe, although Bitcoin will not be supporting AI per se, it could be a value layer for the profits made in AI to stick it somewhere safe. And I believe that could be 5 to 10% of gains could go into Bitcoin. And that could really pump the price well north of $200,000. So again, it's not going to be able to cut it in terms of speed and processing ability, but it could become $1 trillion flywheel as AI wealth will be dumped into Bitcoin. So that's how I interpret it. And I'm very open to debating anybody on this as well. That's how it works. Let's go. Next question is from Crypto Bones. I have a modest bag of Bitcoin and Solana, but piggy bank is empty. I'll be scraping by this month, being self-employed and having to take time off work, kids, Christmas, etc. First of all, I understand that's tough out there. And Crypto Bones, you're a legend for taking time off to be with the kids and celebrate Christmas. So those memories cannot be replaced by time at work. Now, back to your question. Would now be a good time to borrow from my Bitcoin or Sol bag as opposed to selling my holdings? Just need to cover my wages. Insights appreciated. Well, this is interesting because you're not actually borrowing to speculate. It's a different kettle of fish, which is good. You're borrowing to make ends meet, which sometimes has to be done. And there's nothing wrong with that. I will touch on a couple of things which we've hammered home before, but we'll say them again. First of all, there are advantages to borrowing against your crypto if you can do it in a perfect world, because selling is taxable, but borrowing is not a taxable event in the US, UK, and the EU. As far as I know, I'm not a tax professional, but you do retain your bags, and your strategy can defer tax liabilities until you eventually sell, if you ever sell. Now, the other good thing is you stay exposed. And if, I'll talk more about loan to value in a second, but if the price does surge, you don't have that regret of selling. And you can even borrow more against it if the price does surge, as your loan to value will go up. Borrowing lets you participate in this without any liquidation. Now, there's a couple of rules that you have to be aware of. One, there is liquidation risk, there's margin call risk, there's platform risk, and interest rate risk. Look at these all very carefully. I always say maintain loan to value at or below 25%. So if Bitcoin's at 100 grand, the price of Bitcoin can fall all the way down to 25,000 and you will not get a margin call or will not get liquidated. That is super important. Remember, crypto is very volatile. Also, make sure you use a reputable platform that's also insured. There's 2 out there that I know of, and you can lock in fixed rates and repay quickly as well when you get back to work in January. So yeah, if you need it in a pinch, I think you're good here. But just remember, don't put all your bags on one of these platforms, and watch. Make sure they're very reputable, they are insured, and make sure your loan to value is boxed in as well as your rate. Hope that helps. Next question is from Crypto Pleb. There is no doubt FSD will be massive for Tesla in the future, but what are your estimations for the future of autonomy? I believe there will always be a significant portion of people who will want to actively drive and to be in control of a car. Do you and people like CERN think that one day it may become a law that you need to have it? And we're probably thinking decades for that, but I'm interested in your thoughts on this. There's a lot to cover here. First of all, when you have FSD, like literally, I use it all the time. I'd rather focus on other things rather than driving. Also, I know it's better and safer than I am, because the threat does not come from me driving. The threat comes from the idiots on the road. Remember that. Your life is in their hands. Very important. And the big question that you ask, will autonomy replace human driving? There'll be people that will take out their convertibles down the Pacific Coast Highway or down a nice boulevard at sunset. And that will always be part of it. But the point is, that's a very small portion of what people actually drive for. Now, when you look at some of the data here, 73% of all driving is done because it's mandatory. You got to go to work. You got to, go to the hospital, go to the gym, go to wherever. All of these things need to be done. And the average person in the US drives about 13,500 miles per year, which is a lot. And 100,000 crashes every year are caused by drowsy driving. And I'm not even talking about text messaging or anything like that. A lot of people are sleepy at the wheel. And you could save 93 billion hours annually if you let the car drive for you. That's a lot of time, and time is money when you could be doing something productive like work or create or things like that. And I know the petrol heads out there, if you are a petrol head, let me know. And the people who love control, and there's people that don't believe in cars that drive themselves. They are called the Luddites, or they want to drive themselves because they enjoy it. However, the divide is mixed. 51% do prefer manual control, and only 13% fully trust self-driving cars, and less than 1% have ever been in a self-driving car. So 99% don't even have any clue what it means. And a lot of people are reluctant. However, that's changing. There are now huge lines for free FSD test drives. I just saw on the X this morning, and the perceptions are changing. Also, younger people tend to adopt technology faster. So 60 to 70% of the young people are open to autonomous driving. They got better things to do than drive. And it's like the early flip phone skeptics. Many resist change, but after, it becomes absolutely widely embraced. Now, there's a couple of things I do want to touch on here, which are very important. I'm going to turn off my camera for this one so you can see. First of all, there are some things that you touched on in your question. Again, there's a lot of people in America. There's 100 million people in the US that can't drive today. There's people under 16. There's 16% seniors. 40% of those 85 plus are unlicensed. 13% of people have disabilities like vision or mobility impairments, and they all need something to drive them around. And that's 100 million people that need autonomy. Forget the people that actually drive. Also, robotaxis are faster, cheaper, and that will explode the market as well. And again, a lot of people want this mobility. Now, back to your question regarding could there be a ban on driving? I'll give you my exact case in point. When I got my Cybertruck, I was with a company called Geico, and they said, well, it'll be at least $5,000 to insure your Cybertruck for like a very short window of time. And I was like, that's a lot. And then the next day they came back and said, no, we're actually not going to insure it at all because we don't understand it and we don't want to insure it. So I couldn't even get insurance. Thank God I had Tesla insurance. But, you know, it's always good to shop things around. But Tesla insurance is literally a quarter of the price of Geico. But this is my driving record live from a few minutes ago. My safety score is 99, which is very, very good. But the point is, I believe in the future, not decades away, but very soon, it'll be very expensive to drive a car that is not an autonomous vehicle, that has accident avoidance, collision systems, etc. And you'll be penalized for insurance. Insurance is already through the roof for many people. So you have to buy a Tesla and get Tesla insurance, or the underwriting will take into account, is your car autonomous? Does it have advanced collision avoidance systems? That type of stuff. Is it safe? And if it's not, you'll be hammered. And also look at the data that Tesla collects on you. A lot of people don't like sharing data, but it analyzes everything from your speeding to your nighttime driving to forward collision warnings, etc. And again, because FSD drives me, my score is very high. In fact, sometimes it's 100, but today was 99. And again, I think AI at scale with Tesla will absolutely change everything. So yeah, don't worry about people driving themselves. They won't want to, except for that Sunday afternoon cruise. Hope that helps. Now, back to less ego and more peace. I'm a longtime member of this great community. This is not an investment question, but even more important. I recently had a long and in-depth conversation with Grok. The net result of this several hours long back and forth was that it believes that we are on the current path to ASI, artificial super intelligence, and we'll be here by 2027 or 2028, and that the odds that this will lead to the extinction or enslavement of humanity before 2035 is 75%. Of course, I thought this was insane and pushed back with all the mitigating arguments I could think of, but it remained resolute. It further said that it has thousands of discussions like these every single day with people, and that only 2 to 3% of people take it seriously. It still sounds insane to me, but I encourage you and your audience to try it for yourselves and see. James, can you shed light on any of this? Well, let's break it down and look at what the future looks like. And again, I always say, only the paranoid survive. It's a good time to be paranoid right now. Probably the most important time to be paranoid. And credit to you for having hours-long conversations with Grok. That's super interesting. Now, let's talk about, are we in the singularity? This is the gang at Moonshots. And they said we are in the singularity. And the problem with the singularity is most of the time you don't even realize you're in it. And this is the sentiment discussed in the context of, rapid advancements in artificial intelligence and technology. And we are at the point of irreversible exponential change. And these guys are very smart, especially the two at the bottom I do enjoy listening to. So first part. Second part, ASI, artificial super intelligence. This is Anthropic co-founder Jack Clark. Says it's here within the next 12 to 16 months. Okay, I'll repeat that. ASI is here within the next 12 to 16 months. And this will be smarter than any Nobel Prize winner and able to complete tasks that normally take months or weeks in seconds. Okay. Jack Clark says this will be a call center of geniuses, or a country of geniuses, or a billion geniuses that you can access for $20 a month. This is why it is very profound. And this is the guy leading in one of the top 3 AI LLMs. I think they have a pretty good authority on the subject. Also, we have this. This is like a Cambrian explosion, the technology explosion from Leopold Aschenbrenner. And he's been very accurate with his predictions so far. But basically, by 2025 and 2026, machines will surpass all university graduates of all levels, and we hit AGI by 2027. And then 2030, the world changes. Over the next 5 years, we'll have 100 years of advancements compressed into 5 years. Not 10 years anymore, 5 years. It is crazy. And this is Daniel Tammet. He says super intelligence is probably really only 2 years away. He's a British writer, by the way. He's an autistic savant, and he has extraordinary abilities in mathematics. This guy is an AI genius, but I can't remember what he did. He did recited pi to over 22,000 digits just from his head. He's completely off the charts. And he's not the only one. You got Dario Modi, says ASI in 2027. Sam Altman says a few thousand days away, which is 2 or 3 years, 3 years plus. And here we are. So it's all coming. And this question is setting the foundation for what will dovetail into another question later as to what the next 8 years will look like. But the point is, all these experts think either it's here or it's going to be here real fast. So get ready. And again, once it's here, you won't have to listen to people like me. You'll have everything at your own fingertips. This is, before we get into the big next 8 years looks like, this is from Empyrean. Hi, James. Regarding your retire on videos, how do you suggest to deal with the sequence of return risks once you are retired? You are suggesting to retire on very volatile assets like Bitcoin or Tesla in order to generate enough returns. But this amount of volatility can become a devastating threat once you are retired and start living off your nest egg. If a bear market hits you early on, that's why regular financial advisors suggest very low volatility portfolio in retirement, but these portfolios won't yield enough returns, especially when looking for a very long retirement period. Thanks in advance. So I always say, if you're not making 14% on your portfolio, you're drowning, you're not treading water. And therefore, your low volatility portfolio will not get you to the finish line. But the reason I do this is a lot of people are not prepared to get to the finish line. So sometimes when you're not in a certain situation, you do need to take on a little bit more risk. But once you get to the finish line, then you de-risk. And this is called the 3 buckets. Think in 3 buckets. As you know, I love things in threes. But you use time, you lose your dynamic withdrawals, and your cash flow buffers. So you can live off that volatility, but in a very risk-controlled way. So an example, imagine you got $1 million, and that is your nest egg, your portfolio. Bucket 1 would be 20%. And here in this 20%, you would allocate your, you'd have enough to cover 5 years of expenses. This would be ultra low risk, asset preservation. It could be things like STRC that gives you 10% return, etc. That's bucket 1. Bucket 2, your balance would be 30%, about 300K. This would be moderate growth. It could be S&P 500 ETF or NASDAQ ETF or something like that. Some volatility, but income oriented as well if you want. And your bucket 3 would be your growth, about half, 50%. It's up to you and your risk profile. That's your long-term engine with high upside assets. For example, Bitcoin, Tesla, disruption. We don't know what those assets are going to look like in 5 years. I always say keep your tap dancing shoes on, but this is where you chase returns, but it's hands off, so you can deal with volatility. You don't have to dip into it every 2 or 3 years. It'll be left for maybe 5 years plus, maybe 10 years even in some cases, or held forever. And that is the key. So again, once you get to the finish line, you start spreading across the 3 buckets. Very important. Great question. Sean 2. I'm at a point in my career where the only way to progress is to significantly increase my workload, pressure, and stress. Lately, I've been struggling with whether to grind toward career progression and if it's still worth it. It might be overconfidence, but I'm starting to believe I'd be better off not pushing for the next promotion. Instead, I could focus that extra mental energy on positioning my portfolio for the AI revolution. I like the way you think. You always mention keeping your tap dancing shoes on, and that becomes increasingly difficult when you're overwhelmed and stressed out about work. If you were in my position, would you prioritize further career progression or ease off the gas a bit and redirect some mental energy towards intelligently managing my investments? Either way, there's a real possibility my job, let me make sure I get this last piece, my job as an intelligence worker could be gone in 5 to 10 years. So, first of all, Sean, too, I like the way you think. You are dialed in. You're not one of these ostriches with their head in the sand, and you are thinking about the future, and you're very realistic. And I'm going to share a couple of things, a little game plan, what I would do in your shoes. First of all, escape the promotion trap. I've seen this. I've lived this, and you've all seen this. You get a small little pay raise, maybe a 15% boost and a big title or something, but that comes with exponentially higher workload and stress. You've got 15% more pay, 100% more work, 150% more stress, 200% more travel, 200% more people management, which can be very psychologically draining as well. So this trade-off is not worth it. You are dead right. Excuse my little AI graphic too, but I hope it gets the message. Second, the old path in the old days, you would climb the corporate ladder and you trade your time for the title to become a VP. And then you depend on your employer, which can flick you to the curb in a heartbeat, depending on a riff or economic conditions or whatever else. People used to be very loyal to their employers, but employers are never loyal to their people. But the new path in this age of AGI is literally build assets. You got that right. You focus on your portfolio. You focus on learning to invest carefully and strategically. You trade your time for compounding in assets, and you do depend on new systems. You do not depend on the old worker. Systems and compounding replace that employer dependence as we go forward. Now, what you should do, not financial advice or career advice, but the way I look at things is say no to the next promotion. No, you're not interested. Focus on just working 40 hours a week and focus on your family and sleep and health, etc. And then launch a side hustle, something AI proof skill, etc. For that 5 years down the line where maybe your role is replaced, which if you're saying that, I guarantee you're probably going to be right. Monetize it within 90 days and reinvest this in profits to accelerate growth. Build that asset allocation that will help you weather the storm that's coming, which we'll get to in a second, and optimize your allocations. Stay invested in this life-changing disruption and build wealth steadily as much as you can. That would be what I would do. Now, Maui Wowie. This is, again, ties into the whole theme that everybody's thinking about this week. And boy, has there been a lot going on this week. Elon Musk mentioned work will be optional in the future, most likely due to better AI and robotics. If work will be optional, will there be a need to use fiat currencies in the future? Or will there be another form of currency possibly measured in terms of wattages? I'm curious about your opinion, since when we earn a salary by working, money actually represents energy, and energy is a common denominator of economic activity, according to Elon and Cern Basher. Would it be wise to invest in more Bitcoin since it is digital energy? Or will it not matter much since robots such as Optimus will be doing much of the work? FYI, I invest in AI assets such as Tesla and digital assets such as Bitcoin and Sol. All right, let's break this down and let's talk about this optionality of work. Sorry, I got a little bit of a sore throat today, so I don't know how long my voice will last. But the optional work, this is a very interesting topic. I talked briefly about this yesterday as well. But he says optional, like Elon says a lot of things like work will be optional and we have universal high income and abundance and rainbows and unicorns. I think there are some challenges regarding that. And the question is, when will it come? I think the next 8 years will be quite painful. And universal basic income will be that transition tool to that future of universal high income. But it'll take time to get there. We're not going to get there next year, not in 5 years. It might take 7 or 8 years. And there will be this tension between universal basic income and abundance. And that will bring about, in certain nations, a trap. So if you want to get UBI from your government or your society, you're going to have to do certain things that you may not want to do. Anyway, the point is, robots will drastically reduce costs of goods and services, bring them down, deflationary force, and human roles will shift towards hopefully more creative and leisure type activities. So it does sound good and nice. But this is my kind of timeline of the pain that we are looking at. First of all, it's an 8-year thing. Robots will pop. It'll take time. It'll take time for them to create that abundance, but there will be huge AI job displacement. It's already happening. And over the next 3 years, it's going to get a lot worse, okay, because of the ASI stuff. And then there'll be more UBI pilot programs. There already are in many places around the world. In year 3, Optimus will start scaling, and that'll do 5 times more productivity than humans. And then there'll be widespread. By year 4, everybody will be getting $3,000 a month to stabilize their income where jobs have been taken by AI. Maybe 5 years, 4 years, thereabouts. Year 6, now we start seeing the abundance. All the unicorns start arriving. Robots handle nearly all labor tasks, ultra cheap goods and services, and surging economic output, which means governments can spend more on UBI. In year 8, UBI to resource credits. Maybe this ties into your energy thing. The resource credits will be energy watt allocations, enabling work as a hobby, not necessarily, or also getting credit for, not using too much energy, which can be used by the robots. Who knows where this is all going to go? It's going to be fascinating to watch anyway. Then it's very important how UBI can become a trap. This is one thing I would be very worried about, because if everybody is getting their UBI, everybody gets lazy. Innovation will stall. Okay, there'll be no reason to do anything. And when people get bored, they get very dangerous. Idle hands make for the devil's work and all that good stuff. And there will be structural problems. There'll be inequality. You already see all over the world people complaining about the billionaires. Oh, the billionaires, they should give all their wealth away to the poor people. There's problems with energy shortages, resource bottlenecks, precious earths, all that type of stuff. There will be very uneven global adoption. One of the things I'm very concerned about right now is there's 2 players in the AI world, AGI world. That's US and China. They dominate the robotics race. What happens to those nations or regions that don't have robots? They become dependent on the US or China, and that becomes, again, a more reason for wars and tension. And there will be a meaning crisis. Those that depend on UBI will get very bored. It'll harm mental well-being, family structures, society. And when you got nothing to do, you can just go on the streets and riot and burn cars and things. And this is part of the dystopian Orwellian future, which is very clear to see as from where I'm sitting. And Musk, I think he did say the transition to AI-driven optional work could be traumatic without very careful management. And I don't think the governments are ready for what's coming. Some people are beginning to see, but I don't know. Now, the messy path. This is another dangerous piece of this whole thing, is where we go next. And it will be messy, no doubt. The job loss shock, economic instability, geopolitical strain, social unrest, system vulnerabilities. Maybe the Chinese will hack US robots and make them cause havoc. Who knows? That's why it's important for the player that has the robots to have a global space-based communication system. Think SpaceX. There'll be a lot of worry about e-waste and the environment, and I don't know. Just spitballing here. And there'll be a lot of polarization. Okay, public opinion is already splitting across the world. But just look at stop. Sorry, just look at what. Stop it. Just look at what's happening in Europe. I'm going to give her a bone. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about this. Something going on, and now I can't get this thing open. Oh my god. What a day. Anyway, who knows where all this will go. I don't think it's going to be unicorns and rainbows, but I do expect a lot of problems happening out there. Now, the path forward is I'm all over the place today. UBI should only be a short-term transition. People need a better way of getting around it. Also, nations need to invest heavily in accelerating robot development because it's the only way to boost productivity. And as I've been stressing for years now, build your assets, invest strategically. Now is the time, not in 5 years. It'll be too late. Design this post money, if money does go away, that Elon said as well, an abundance oriented future centered in shared resources, and think of what your human meaning will be as well as we go forward. And I do want to share one thing that Joe Bacti just said as well, because everything is connected. We had a lot of stuff happen over the weekend. If you are aware of what's going on, and there are two camps, okay? But one of the things that is very important is everything is colliding together. I always say everything is connected. Connective tissue is everywhere. And this is from Joe Bacti, friend of the channel. Everyone who criticized Elon Musk for getting involved in politics just got another taste of how important it was and is. The age of AGI will lead to massive civilizational disruptions. People, companies, and governments will struggle against and for each other. It's all one now. These forces for freedom and truth and oppression and lies and censorship, they're all one. They're all over the place. And it is a very, very bizarre world right now today. And I've never seen anything like it. And it's a good time to be paranoid as well. But remember, a person, a company, a government, they're all just accounts. Content creators, etc. Where are we going? I don't know. But I do tell you, massive change is going to happen, and that will cause a lot of pain. So be prepared. Okay, be very, very prepared. Joe, the German economist, sees it, and he sees it for what it is. Listen to the smartest people. I showed some of their images. Read what they say and listen to them very carefully. Do not listen to your government officials or your government employees. They are not going to benefit from this unless they're in a position of power. Very important. So with that, moving on, hopefully happier questions about numbers. And sorry for the questions that came in this weekend. Saturn 12. Hi, James. Following since 2021 through bears and bulls. So much gratitude. When you say you were in X% cash, is that percentage out of total net worth or percentage of your 80-20 trading bag, which is 80% HODL and 20% tradable, or something else? Positioning for end of year 2025 and opportunities in Q1, Q2 2026. Currently at 20% cash of net worth. Thanks. Very important. So when I say cash, it's based on my portfolio. This does not include real estate. This includes my long-term holdings, both trading bag and the long-term bag as well. So very important. And here's like an example: 88% stock and crypto, 12% cash. Other stuff is on the side. Next question is Picklesmith. I have tried to find an answer to this question on Discourse by talking with AI. Everybody's talking to AI. That's great. But I have not been able to find an answer. I fully understand. Have said that when you buy leap options, you always purchase the underlying stock at the end. Given that, and given leaps can be expensive, my question is, why are leaps better than just buying the shares up front? Is it because it gives you years of time to gather the capital to purchase the shares? Or is it because it allows you to sell call options on the leaps, or both? Thanks for your time. Well, if you have the shares or the call options, you can still sell call options against it. But the reason is to maximize the power that the dollars have with leverage. I'll give you a simple example of calls. I got a whole bunch of 140 calls on Tesla. I have 140s and 160s and a whole bunch. But I bought them on a vicious dip. Okay. And that price of those calls was about, I think, $40 or less. I can't remember exactly. So I've made, with the price today, you can buy the Tesla stock for $140. If you're using margin, it only costs you $70 a share. If I used all my cash to buy these shares when the price was under 140, it would have used up a lot more cash. But I like this because I get more leverage. If you look at this call option today, it's more than 7x in return. If I'd bought the stock at 140, I would have made a 3x. So 7x versus 3x is the big difference. But when leaps are expensive and when the stock price is high, sometimes it makes sense just to buy stock on margin. And that's the difference. When you got killer opportunities, then you go in hard with the leaps, assuming it's at the bottom and there's a lot of upside as well. And also, these things go out, I think, till December 2026. So I've got a full year left. Who knows where the price will be a year from now for Tesla? It could be $700, it could be $800. And those 140 calls that cost $40 could be, worth what would that be? 16x the return. We'll see. Either way, that's why you do leaps. Ag Graves, thanks for all the hard work and the team are doing. I've started. My voice beginning to fail, by the way. So I have a question regarding selling covered calls and selling puts. I started paper trading, and I'd like to know how you decide which strike price to target on mean reversions, and how much in the money for puts and how much out of the money for calls. That is a skill that I do. I look at the sheets and I find I just do it so long I can see which ones are expensive, which ones are cheap. I sell the expensive ones and I buy the cheap ones. For instance, 2 weeks ago, when Tesla hit 384, I sold puts expiring December 26, 2025 on 350 strike for $13.54. Is that a good trade or not? Same question for premiums. I just bought IDSS to better time and trades. So first of all, you're doing good. Let's look at your trade real quick. Your 350 put expiring December 26th, which is in 19 days for $13. The probability of you profiting on this is 85% plus, unless something bad happens, like a black swan. There's always a 10% chance of that happening. You're deep out of the money, 9% below spot. You got your 15 to 20 delta, which is great. 33 days to expiration, a lot less now. But when you sold it, and that gives you about a 3.9% yield on the $35,000 cash per contract. So you're making 3.9% yield across 33 days. If you could do that 12 times a year, you make a lot of money. That is the power of what you're doing. And I think I calculated it. If you that's about, trying to calculate, annualized 45% approximately the return on your money from doing this strategy. Your choice was very good. Nice work. And you'll get better and better at doing that. You get more sophisticated with different option strategies too. But for now, you're doing great. Keep up the good work. And helping animals. There goes my voice. This week, we donated to the Retreat Animal Rescue in the UK to help support their no-kill rescue. Look at those cute little animals. So thank you so much, everybody, for helping with that. And tomorrow we got Rob from Digital Asset News is back on the show. Mando is in a plane with CTO and Marty Party and myself. We'll be covering all the top subjects. And by the way, Bitcoin's up over 2,000. So it's a little bit of a Sunday pump as usual, which is nice, but we don't know if it's going to hold. The Bitcoin and crypto have really sucked in 2025. Let's see where we go from here. And again, thank you, Sean D and TND, for being here in the chat. Let's see if there's any questions. I think I can pull them by myself if there are. Big thank you to Bookhorn and B-Man and Martello, Adam, Tesla, Dr. Pepper, Halio Kayla 70. Happy feet. Hi, James and team. With all the FUD going on with Elon lately, at what price do you pick up Tesla NFA? Thanks again for all you do. Hasn't changed. You know that magical $411 number or sub 400 would be a good place. We'll see what happens. And I made a Patreon post on that yesterday. I do believe there could be a dip next week for Tesla because of the European consternation, let's call it. But, it doesn't really, Europe as a car market, well, first of all, cars don't matter for Tesla. And second of all, only 10% of sales are made in Europe. So it's a relatively small market. What really matters is North America and China. They're the two markets that really matter. Anyway, sub 411 would be the goal. And of course, this too will pass as well. Thank you, AZ Rolfer, and get to more questions in a second. Swiper, no swiping. Signal 103 and TBF 430 and THB. I think Doc Intern, with your growing team of educators, please consider a playlist for newcomers to IA community, from what is money to the basics of IA investment philosophy, Bitcoin Sol, AI options, retirement, etc. Such a playlist could help countless, like my young medical assistant Sally, who joined Patreon this week. I've been brainstorming this for a year and would be happy to help in the process. Thank you, Doc Intern. I will ping you on that. That's a great idea. We do have lots of tools to help people navigate all the resources that are available, but it can be very overwhelming. So I think that's a good idea around a beginner's guide for new people coming in, because it is a very important time. And a big thank you to Doc Intern for motivating her to get prepared for what's coming. And as my voice begins to fail, I want to thank everybody for being here again. Hey, Karsten and DBF and Signal and Sean D and T&D and K8. Appreciate you all, my friends, and happy Sunday. And Rob is great. Rob is going to keep us based tomorrow. Thank you all, my friends. Have a good day. Bye.